Morning, YouTube. Sean at Top 5 Fit. Beautiful Sunday morning out here in, well, this is my version of church. I'm not sure exactly what everybody else's is, but I like to take strolls on quiet paths and enjoy the sun, listen to the critters, all that good stuff. I'd like to give a shout out today to some clientele, recognizing their accomplishments. Tracy, well done on your triathlon this weekend, young lady. Tracy is a mother of 4 and found the time to actually get in all of the necessary training to not only complete her triathlon, but she got a little bit of a PR too. By the way, that wasn't planned, and we'll go over that in a minute. Also, Wendy took on a half marathon this weekend, and she managed to shave a couple of seconds off of her time. That wasn't planned, it just kind of happened. And then to go back in time a little bit, Katie showed up to the start line of a Tough Mudder, and it was probably one of the worst possible days. Rain, a little bit of snow, whole lot of mud. Very, very cold, very, very unforgiving as far as the toll it took on the body. She came in first in her heat, and that was not planned. So what's my point, I guess, with all of this talk of accomplishment, and none of it seems to be on the books? It just kind of happens. The point of the conversation is this: goal setting. That's what we're talking about today. Pardon the cough. There comes a point in time when you have to kind of figure out what you really want to do and where you're trying to go. And that's where this whole idea of goal setting comes into play. Now, unfortunately, I guess I shouldn't say unfortunately, but it is kind of unfortunate, people have become very fixated on the idea of the short-term goal. They have kind of locked onto the idea that they're going to work for a certain amount of time, they're going to get their reward, and then they're going to move on. Well, the problem is that move on point, that what comes next. When you focus on short-term goals and you only see the short-term goal, you have a tendency to lose sight of the big picture. So for a lot of my athletes over the years, when they would think about just achieving a certain time or a certain distance, it was the aftermath and wreckage that wasn't planned for. And then mild bouts of depression, training disruption, all of these negative factors kind of just kick in. Whereas Tracy, Wendy, and Katie pretty much will hop back into, or hopped right back into their training a day or two later. The point is, if you get so fixated on only getting that 30, 60, 90-day goal, you really kind of lose sight of where you actually expect to see yourself, what you think you're going to become years down the road. And it doesn't prepare you to deal with setbacks. Now, every time I go into any kind of training scenario, I expect wreckage, I expect damage, I expect things to go wrong. So the emphasis isn't necessarily always on output or whether or not I am giving 110% per training session. The emphasis is more placed on you need to be able to do it again the next day. And that's where that long-term vision kind of kicks in. It's more along the lines of, I need to be able to get through X amount of miles or X amount of training hours, but I need to be able to repeat it in order to actually gain the cardiovascular strength, endurance, flexibility, mobility, whatever the goal may be. You need to be able to improve those characteristics, those attributes. And if you're only focusing on each and every training session, you're kind of setting yourself up to fall short of the maximum gain that you could actually get at the tail end, the back end of the program. So focusing on things like nutrition, recovery, supplementation, these things will only make the actual fun part of conditioning more effective. Now, I say fun part because, let's be clear, stretching is not sexy. It's not something that people brag about. At no point in time have I ever had somebody walk up to me and go, "Oh my, you're so bendy. Look how bendy you are. Look at your range of motion in your hips is impressive." I've never had anybody say that to me walking down the street there. The best, most expensive pair of jeans that you could buy will never tell the world that you actually focus on your recovery work, your mobility work. You know, nobody's going to look at your hamstrings and quads and say, "You must be pounding your amino acids." That never happens. So these things that don't get acknowledged by whatever critics you find important, or, you know, actually give some kind of credit to what they're saying to you, they're not going to say those things. You're not going to hear it. And if you don't hear it, you have a tendency not to do it. So the mindset has to shift a little bit from just doing the things that you're getting pats on the back to an actual sound practice, a sound conditioning pattern that will give you not only the results you want in the event, but the ability to move forward and continue on with life. Going back to Tracy, this is a mother of 4. She participated in a triathlon. Do you think for 1 second it would serve her at all to be shut down for the next 2 weeks to the point where she can't even be what she considers an effective mother, effective parent? You know, Wendy doesn't necessarily have children, but she has to go to work. You know, at the end of the day, and I've said this time and time again, we're not being paid. We're out here doing this because we love it and we enjoy accomplishment. We like to feel like we can get something done. There is, I don't know, something romantic about the idea of putting your body through something that a very, very large percentage of the population cannot. And that's, you know, that's something that a lot of people grab onto, whether it's in the training environment, whether it's in the professional world, whether it's in your family world, wherever it is, people like that idea. But how's it really going to look if you spend all that time training, spend all that time conditioning, listening to people tell you that it's not a great idea, that you're going to end up hurting yourself, and then you get hurt? Now, I'm not saying injury is 100% avoidable. Things happen. But if you have a sound conditioning plan that ultimately allows for things to go wrong, you're going to find the bounce back is a lot faster. So when you're setting up your programming, and when you're actually putting together your goal list, if you will, step back for a second and make sure that you're not just fixating on what's going to happen to me in the next 90 days, more as what's going to happen to me across the rest of my life while I'm here on this planet. The other point that I wanted to touch on when it comes to goal setting is try to, if you can, and this is a personal thing, try to keep them to yourself. There is this notion that if you trumpet or voice every little thing that you're trying to accomplish over, you know, your athletic career to everyone around you, that you're going to get this support system that's going to propel you forward to victory and success. When in reality, that very kind of thinking can kind of set you up for bad frame of mind, poor mindset, however you want to phrase it. The fact of the matter is, if you are going to take on anything that has to deal with personal improvement, you're going to face some demons. You're going to face some things within yourself that have been holding you back for a long time. And if you continuously voice what you're trying to do to people, they could very well indirectly, I don't believe people are malicious, 100% of the time, but questions like, are you sure that's okay for you? Are you worried about this happening? Are you worried about that happening? These this kind of questioning, this kind of talk can come from a very sincere and loving place. But what it does is it plants a seed. It puts a seed in your head that something could go wrong. And if you're thinking about your training on a long-term scale, looking at it years down the road, not just 30, 60, 90 days, you've already considered that kind of stuff. You know that there is a potential for muscle strain or joint irritation because you're spending hours working on your craft. Those things are already there. So when somebody kind of voices it, all it does is put doubt in your head. And when that doubt creeps in, that's when you start focusing on the wrong aspects of your conditioning. Am I running enough? Am I biking enough? Am I lifting enough? Am I lifting hard enough? These are the things that can ultimately set you up for, breakdown and injury. So when you put your plan in place, when you start actually executing and taking steps towards, the goals you're trying to achieve, keep that long-term vision in mind. Keep the, I need to get through this and continue on with life mentality. It has never been my goal to sit in the back of any type of athletic environment and talk about my former accomplishments in a wheelchair or on a crutch. I try to avoid these things. The idea is to keep going. The idea is, and by the way, I'm not saying that anybody in wheelchairs and crutches have put themselves on purpose or anything like that. So before the hate starts, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I'm kind of a sissy, and I'm really trying to not let that happen. So when I put together my own training programs or training programs for my clientele, I'm thinking along the lines of they've got to keep going. This event is literally just a spot on the map. They've got to get there. They've got to make it through it in a manner that they are happy and satisfied with. But then they're going to have to get up the next day and get back into the real world. Unless they're a sponsored athlete by, someone like Merrill or Nike. And if that's the case, you get to go ahead and lay down for the next week or two until you go through your next training session. So, things to keep in mind, take away from this entire video. When you're putting together your programming, make damn sure you're thinking about the things that will keep you going. Don't just get set on that 5 or 10 pounds. Don't just get excited over the idea that you're going to cross a finish line. Morning. Because if you do, you're not thinking about what's going to happen in the next 24 to 48 hours. All you're thinking about is that little moment in time, that little bit of glory. And then you're going to make yourself sick trying to figure out how you're going to get through the next week or two's worth of discomfort and get back to a normal life. Thanks again for watching, for giving me a little bit of your time. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the box below. If there's any topics you want me to, give my opinion on, feel free to throw that in there as well. Don't forget to subscribe because there will be more videos coming. Because fitness is life, and this is how I like to do it.